Copa Elite Six. We have taken every available map to get down to these two teams that you see in front of you, Team Liquid and MIBR. A map that we've seen them both play each other on previously, but we're not going to let that cloud our expectations in the here and now. I'm sure that we're going to see something fresh from both these sides.
Please be a smoke ban. Oh, they're targeting Falls hard. They are targeting Falls hard. As soon as I saw the ace get banned, I was like, they know that MIBR have one of the strongest hard supports on their team, and they are straight up trying to eradicate him off the map.
Liquid aren't afraid of a target ban either. Like, they're one of the teams that pull the target ban out more often. I think they're the most frequented target ban team, where they will ban you if you're good at that operator.
Yeah, I mean, they did it to Team 1. Alamau, back on Oregon, they banned the Buck and the Smoke because those are his operators that he likes to play. As a direct result, it actually led Team Liquid into playing a lot of the Clash on defense. Now, Team Liquid are going to be starting off an attack, so we'll have to wait to see if that's something they lean into again. But overall, it wasn't something that was necessarily the best idea for them because they didn't come out on top. When you kind of looked at all the rounds where they did that, they didn't win the majority of them. And when they were on the attack, they also lent into the shields on that side as well. And that's something that Sexy Cake has now just done again. 6-picking over onto the Monty, which was something that turned out to be quite slow going for Team Liquid when they did it against Team 1. And they didn't actually go for the Monty again after that because they just decided it wasn't really worth it.
Do you reckon MIBR have got enough C4s?
Yeah, they got a few.
We're going to compensate for the smoke ban with the fact that everyone's going to have some form of denial. Everybody bring a C4 here, as we know we're going to need it. And we saw a smoke ban affect quite heavily onto Oregon in the way that it played out earlier on this evening. We saw it make, you know, it was a smoke ban in conjunction with a Jaeger ban, so kind of makes it a little bit worse in a lot of ways for the defenders. But it was enough to give the defenders a bit of a tough time there. And Liquid, a team that is notorious for getting the plant down, anything that gives them an advantage in doing that is going to be a good thing.
PSK is the one to be carrying the diffuser. Oftentimes, over the course of the last stage, we've seen Sexy Cake being that one, but because he's playing the Monty, he's more being a protective force. And intel as well. You sometimes have to think of Monty as something of a human drone. Now, dissimilar... Oh, he did just see the foot at the top of the freezer stairs there. Dissimilar from how Team 1 like to play, MIBR are way more likely to have those early roams, which means that Team Liquid will have to be more thorough on the clears, I would imagine, generally, for most of these rounds. Not something that they had to worry so much about in the last best of 3 that they just played against Team 1.
Steady progress here for Liquid. As Felipox is maybe going to change the positioning, at least, of one of his Vulcan shields. Maybe going to play it over inside a laundry instead. As that was kind of a bit of a Liquid favourite toward the latter part of that game on Oregon, is they would switch up their approach, and instead of trying to push down through blue and into elbow, instead they would actually go in through that freezer side and that laundry side. They'd still get everything open and all the hatches, but the main focus and the actual plant would come down inside a laundry.
The double air jabs will prevent any of those defenders from using the tower stairs to flank up and back onto the attackers. So far, Team Liquid, much of their attention is in freezer, but you can hear one of the C4s just clicking away. There's one up there on the top of the, I think that was the attic wall? Yeah, right by a reduct.
Ready and waiting for a flank if he wants to try and make that rotation and take the opportunity. Sexy Cake has come down these main stairs now. He's got force of his teammates by his side. Fouls. It's going to be able to swing and find a massive frag over onto Moringa. There's a load of C4s lying in wait as well. That kill has done quite a lot to stop this attacking push. Raps has managed himself a grenade there. Another one probably going to get tossed on him pretty shortly as you hear it. Knocked by next to Fouls, but Reduct with the flank. It was successful, and more importantly, it is onto the diffuser carrier. Now, kills are carrying forward, and it is a very scrappy and messy affair. But Sexy Cake has managed to get himself into the 1v1. But he has only got the Monty's pistol. He's going to push round into Freezer. Fortunately, well, for the teammate, for the player on the side of MIBR, fortunately, Sexy Cake there misses his shots, as I don't think that MIBR knew where he was coming from in those dying few seconds.
Yeah, I really thought Sexy Cake was actually going to be able to get away with that one, but alas, no, it goes to MIBR. The fact that Reduct was able to rotate down and make a flank into Freezer is almost a short-sightedness from Team Liquid. They really invested a lot of that flank control up towards tower stairs. That's where they were expecting that flank to potentially come from. But instead, came down Freezer. That hadn't been blocked off. To be fair, we only saw where 2 of the air jabs were. So there is a potential that one had been put on Freezer and got shot. But for all we know, it hadn't been, and that was completely open for Reduct to come down. Even though that got traded out, it was a constant backwards and forwards in a bloodbath after that. So you can't even necessarily claim that the trade that was made by Team Liquid nullified the push by Reduct, because that simply wasn't true. And because of the way that you like to play Monty pushes, oftentimes the Monty is going to be shielding at least one other player, and a player is going to be playing off of where the Monty is. Well, that player got killed straight away. That was who Reduct got. It leaves Sexy Cake on his own. Then it was the diffuser carrier, as you mentioned. And suddenly, everyone in Team Liquid who's even alive anymore is scattered around. No real way to be able to retrieve the diffuser. And all of a sudden, it's Sexy Cake on his own, has to try and push through the map to get that final kill. Didn't get it. He was in the disadvantageous position. I mean, you're playing with a pistol against a guy who has a real weapon. MIBR take that first round.
Yo, a pistol's a real weapon. Come on, like, it's one-shot headshot's the thing, you know. We can, I guess, one of the bigger things that impressed me inside of that round was, I think it was Raps that made the decision to actually pick up a piece of his Goyo shield and to move it, and then reinforce the wall in through Freezer, and that wall was then electrocuted as well. And it was that little moment of a bit of setup switch around on the site, which it was too late for Liquid to commit to anything other than the push that they'd started, which was through Freezer. So it was a nice little change from MIBR just part way through their defensive round. It's one of the things that you can actually get away with on Laundry site as well, where typically when you look toward a site like this in kids and dorms, it's much more difficult to redeploy that utility.
Burning out the ADSs so that they'll be able to clear the shield. Sexy Cake throwing in a nade, but there we go. Finally catches it out. The site is, of course, the upstairs site of kids and dorms. We saw Team Liquid pay a lot of attention over to the big window side earlier, and I say that as if no one ever pays attention to big window, but what I mean by that is predominantly pushing in from there and having quite aggressive attempts at planting. But again, they have to bear in mind that MIBR like to play these roams. That's Philippox who's out on the alibi, and it's the job of Nesk to try and flush him out.
Philippox doesn't look like he's being challenged too heavily here. Although Paolo will find an opener over onto Reduct. Sexy Cake backing him up with a kill over onto Fouls. Nesk is in position to take down Philippox if Philippox chooses to rotate, which he's going to have to do, because his teammates are being left quite light on the site. Raps is seeing some pressure coming in now as well. Nesk will find that frag over onto Philippox. Raps left to try and hold on. Lukid backing him up with a couple of kills here as well, but it's going to take more than that. Moringa hits the deck as Raps is able to survive for a time, but not for long enough. And Lukid, the final defender to fall. Pretty rinse and repeat round there from Liquid. MIBR sort of left chasing the tail.
Yeah, I mean, the aggressive positioning from Raps on the games room wall, I get it, but also when you don't have other defenders around you to help support that, you're basically going to die there. And I'm not entirely sure how much you're going to be able to stop from an attacker push. You know, you're going to have Moringa walk straight in from Trophy, and yeah, Raps, if he'd have hit the shot, would have been able to kill him, but then he's got his back turned to Closet. Well, there were players from Team Liquid who were out there. They would have been able to flank him and shoot him in the back of the head anyway. So I'm not sure how I feel about that very aggressive positioning from the Goyo, just in that particular instance anyway. And it was very clear that the roam from Felipox simply wasn't enough for MIBR. Nesk didn't, you know, his absence from everything that was happening upstairs wasn't enough to hinder Liquid to a point where they couldn't play. And Felipox wasn't aggressing so much onto Nesk to force him in a 1 versus 1 anyway. And I don't think that's a bad thing per se, but my point is maybe he could have had more value if he were playing closer to the site, which doesn't necessarily mean he has to be on site, but not such a wildly deep roam.
10 seconds to go.
Plenty of players in Attic at the moment for MIBR. I'm sure that's going to change. Well, Luca is actually underneath there. It was a bit of an optical illusion, but there were still 3. The setup was being put on in. That's going to get reinforced inside of kids as well. So maybe the mirror window going to get played on that wall. Certainly a bold move to bring the mirror. Obviously, MIBR feeling as though they need to keep a firmer control of certain points of ingress, as Liquid kind of had everything their own way. Once they'd got that games room wall open, it was fairly straightforward for them to close out the round after they'd gotten a couple of picks on through it. But with the mirror window being played on there this time, it could make their job a little bit more difficult.
Alright. Team Liquid. They were very well coordinated in that last round, and really once they'd kind of opened up the space that they needed, you know, taking control in the Trophy particularly, they kind of had enough freedom to just walk on through. Nesk is going to be pushed from 2 sides and manages to get both kills. Oh, okay, a third one popped up out of nowhere, but you should not need to dedicate 3 men to killing 1 guy downstairs, because guess what? MIBR have still had 2 deaths as a direct result.
There's 2 big players gone as well in Felipox and Raps. They've also lost control of the mirror window in the process, as an attacker was able to get below into Classroom, open up that soft floor, and use that angle to open up that mirror window. Sexy Cake now able to get the shield gone as well. Everything really going in Liquid's favor here. Palu being able to hold from big window. He knows there's a player at the top of White Stairs. He's just seen an impact be thrown from that direction. Still 2 C4s available on the side of MIBR. We'll make that 1, as Redux is going to be the only player that's got the C4 left. Palu's still trying to keep hold of that angle into Kid's bedroom, but Moringa looking to aggress on through. Not working off a lot of information, but able to pre-fire his way on in. He's going to get caught out there by Fowls. The kills continue to come for Liquid. Fowls now left with everything to do. PSK is going to be getting that plant down. There's plenty of time left here, and the attackers aren't going to feel too pinched, especially with someone as good as Palu covering that diffuser going down.
And it's in a situation like that at the end where Falls is really going to feel the effects of having the smoke banned out. While on the mute, he still has access to, you know, the SMG-11 and the shotgun. He simply doesn't have those Toxic Babe canisters that he can throw out and try and deny the plant. He carries a C4. I didn't see if he'd already used his at that point, but that still requires you to have something of a direct line towards that planter. It doesn't have to be a line of sight. You don't have to see them, but you still have to have that direct line that's not impeded by walls and things like that. And that could mean that you have to put yourself in a position that makes you vulnerable to where the angles are being held by the supportive player on Team Liquid. So that's where it really hurts, because Falls is definitely a very, very effective support player for MIBR. Consistently at the top of the ratings for the team, usually at the top of the ratings in general in the region. Having those taken away from him removes a lot of that late round capability that MIBR usually have. Especially if they're going to be losing players like Raps and Felipox early on to someone like Nesk. You have to rely on the power that you have in the late round, and they just didn't.
I mean, Smoke's something that every team relies on in the late round. We see it hurting whoever is on the receiving end of that. And, you know, Liquid starting things off on attack here. Okay, they have the nicer side of things to start on with that smoke ban, but they're going to feel the pinch of that as well when they switch over onto the defense. It's just about whether you can get enough important rounds before your time comes, really. But especially a team like Liquid, it makes so much sense to ban Smoke just because of how plant focused they are. Sexy Cake regularly getting that diffuser down. Palu seems to be having a lot of fun with things as well as he finds another opener here onto Reduct.
Where even was Reduct? Did he try to run out, or was he... Because Palu was on an upside down rappel. Yeah, I guess he tried to jump out because you can see that the window's been opened on T2. Unlucky, I guess.
Very unlucky indeed. I think it was more lucky that we actually got to see an idea of where he was running out from.
There is actually another player of MIBR down at the bottom of tower. I don't know if you noticed the silhouette that was down there while Palu is still actually at the top on T3. He did whip out his drone, but there was a player down there. This is a very aggressive hold in Freezer by MIBR as well. They know that there are players of Team Liquid at the top of it who may be looking to push on down. A lot of Team Liquid's pushes onto this site don't necessarily involve the Freezer pressure in the same way that someone like NIP might exhibit. In fact, that's a personal favorite choice of NIP, but it's still something that generally teams will at the very least look to push down slightly at the start, simply to clear utility, remove the default camera, and such things as that.
One of the advantages that Liquid have got now with giving this a couple of different attempts is that as a defending team, you don't really know which sort of angle you're going to be left to deal with here. Are you going to be left to deal with a freezer push, or are you going to left to deal with main stairs? Is it going to be a combination of the two, or is it actually going to be, you know, a backsided push? Is it going to come through those rear stage stairs? And, you know, you kind of just constantly left guessing. Now, Liquid are kind of giving the game away a little bit here, but we are getting down to that pinch time. Palu's got himself into laundry. Felipox, he's in position to try and make a rotation, although as the Goyo, probably rather that he didn't. The push will be coming from the typical Liquid side of Freezer and Laundry, as led by Nade. Sexy Cake's going to storm his way on through with the accompaniment of Nesk. Nesk is not able to win out that engagement. In fact, the engagements are going to be going in the favor of MIBR as Felipox and Fouls go huge alongside of Lukid. PSK now giving the game away. He is going to be taken out there by Felipox. A little bit of a rotation there through from the Goyo. That will be enough to net MIBR around here.
So no one team has started taking things away just yet, like we've seen in a couple of rounds, but also this does potentially set a precedent for the way that this entire series is going to go. Liquid did try something a bit different with the way that they pushed. That's absolutely true, but it wasn't quite as... What's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say coordinated or synchronized, because to imply that Team Liquid didn't have coordination in that would be wrong. But it's just there wasn't the same level of physical togetherness that we've seen in some of their pushes before. You know, for example, Team Liquid oftentimes will have most of their players come from one angle, whereas I think they were a bit more split up in that round. Back up to Kids, though. MIBR have only visited 2 different sites at this point, and both times they visited Kids' dorms, they've lost it. Evidently, they feel more confident in their ability to successfully defend this site finally for the 3rd time trying, rather than to go to one of the kitchen sites. Now look at this, interestingly, they've decided to leave one of the games room walls open again. That's where Raps was playing very offensively on the Goyo last time, but he found himself in a position where he was really surrounded and left with few options when Team Liquid made their push in. If he's to do that again, I want to see more support from other players on MIBR. That will probably mean that they need a very strong attic hold, because they'll need players to be able to hold from behind. And a strong attic hold isn't necessarily something they had going for them last time. With the trophy wall open too, it means the long lines of sight can be open, but as I always like to say, holes can work both ways, and it does potentially run a risk onto the player who would be playing in the attic pit.
You'd think it would make more sense to go to a different site, but with MIBR trying to force this one out, I have to see if the adjustments that they're making are going to be enough. They've not brought the mirror this time. It's more similar to the way they defended it in the first attempt in round number 2. Alu getting himself upstairs into tier 3, the top tier of the attic. Going to just be able to watch for Sexy Cake getting that wall open. Make sure no one's on the other side ready to Hail Mary a C4 through. An attic side push is always quite crucial, especially with the way that MIBR are choosing to defend in that games wall. It takes away a lot of the pressure, really, of getting that games wall open if already some of it is left soft. You can then instead just focus on trophy and attic and really start to make a pinch on the defenders that are going to be there. Felipox is going to be off-site, though. Does anybody know where Felipox is? Lukid as well. Heavy off-site presence, Gio.
Yeah, they did this last time, and it didn't seem to deter Team Liquid all that much. And may I remind you of a couple of rounds ago when MIBR also invested in a roam, and they needed 3 people to actually kill Nesk. It would have been safer to have just played them all on the site and wait for Nesk to kill them when the time comes. At least then they would have, you know, had a bit more time to actually play as a team and get some stuff done. You know, with all jokes aside, I just worry that the roam that they're going for isn't working as well as they would like, purely because of how effective Nesk has been.
Sexy Cake going to be trying to gather some intel there, but the mute jammers, I believe, slowing him down. Time's running out, really, here for Liquid. And if they don't know of Lukid, then they could be in for a little bit of a pain. Because with only 24 seconds left, there has to be a push coming through here. Seeing that Lukid is in position to strike, and he will, taking down Moringa. C4 toss that is going to leave everybody asking questions as to where that was actually intended for. But he has to get himself back onto the site, as Liquid have done what Liquid do, and they have taken site and are now looking to try and plant this diffuser and force Fouls into the retake. Lukid has made his way back up these white stairs, but Fouls isn't working off any intel. He doesn't know where Palu is. Palu is able to find the frag over onto Fouls. It really is all down to Lukid now. He picks up a triple on the round, keeps himself off site, and then swoops on in, takes all the glory, and is able to disable that diffuser for MIBR.
I'm certainly glad for them that they got the retake, but it was still a very, you know, scrappy situation that allowed Team Liquid to get that plant in the first place. And the fact that MIBR lacked information in that situation is super concerning. Fall's getting taken down. He's virtually right next to the planter and doesn't know about it. He doesn't know where any of these players on Team Liquid are. Part of me wonders if maybe they should consider bringing an Echo along with everything else that they're bringing. I understand that Falls wants to stay on the mute because he's used to, you know, the M590, he's used to the SMG11, and I think it's probably best to have him on that weaponry that he's so proficient at. However, when it comes to having that late round information and the denial potential, I personally think that it might be worth their time to invest more in another specific denial operator. I suppose you could bring a Maestro. You could bring a Maestro, you could bring an Echo, something like that, and maybe that would also be an opportunity to take one of those roamers and put them on, you know, a role or a position or a responsibility that's maybe not going to be quite as conducive to them dying early on in rounds. Now, a lot of what I just said is a real outsider's perspective, because of course you have to take into consideration what makes these players comfortable, what they've practiced, things like that. And you can't simply just say, yo, play this operator, what are you doing? But my personal opinion is that maybe having an Echo available, having those yokai drones would help MIBR in these late rounds where they've had a harder time.
Not a great deal separating these two at the moment. So far, we are struggling to find a difference maker. MIBR edging things ever so slightly. Liquid have looked pretty good up until this point, and I say that they are going to lose their star player in Palu. Fowles is able to take out Palu nice and early on here on this tertiary site. We haven't seen MIBR try and defend this site as of yet. Not one of the most popular ones on Oregon, but it is fairly popular inside of Brazil. Meeting room and kitchen can regularly be a site that we see teams like Team Liquid go to, and I'm sure we will see them choose it on their defensive phase as well. So far, it seems to be giving them a few troubles.
They just want to clear out security, which is a notoriously difficult room to clear out, admittedly. And the nade from Sexy Cake wasn't successful in doing that, but he doesn't want to overstep. Reduct gets the next kill onto Nesk. That is definitely a valuable pick, given how much of a headache Nesk has caused on this team. Sexy Cake, just not even being aware of where Reduct is outside the window, also gets taken down. Now leaves Moringa and Liquid on their own to deal with the full squad of MIBR.
PSK is going to be able to breach on through, as top floor control is still being vied for here, but with limited resources remaining, it's going to be a tough ask for Liquid. They have plenty of time here, and they've got quite a nice pinch going, but they are just severely outnumbered. That outnumbering is going to continue as Reduct takes down PSK. Lukid for a frag onto Moringa. Sees a flawless round here for MIBR.
Isn't it interesting how, you know, the site that Team Liquid are sort of known for really preferring on the defense, they struggled with on the attack. And I think, you know, the way that MIBR set up their defense meant that Team Liquid did have to deal with it in a way that was not necessarily mirroring of how a team may have to deal with Liquid's preferred defensive setup, which usually involves things like a dock, also a mozzie, and they press very aggressively up towards the meeting wall. That's not how MIBR had themselves situated. They had that player in security, they had the presence upstairs, which Team Liquid tried to deal with quite late on in the round, but also by that point there were only 2 of them left alive. It definitely didn't help that there wasn't a super extreme amount of vigilance shown by Team Liquid. I mean, Sexy Cake running at the bottom of the white stairs straight in front of Reduct's line of sight. It's one of those mistakes. It happens. It's not a huge comment on Sexy Cake. It's more just a silly mistake that can be a domino effect in the outcome of the round. MIBR to have come out 4-2 at that half, I think is really good. I mean, A, because this was once again Team Liquid's map choice. We saw this when Team Liquid were playing Team 1 in that last series in the semi-final. They actually lost their map choice of Oregon. So MIBR being ahead is really good. And it especially shows adaptability because of how they struggled against Team Liquid at the beginning of that half.
Tough round then for Liquid to face off against here, as it's going to be the first round as those guys on the defense. Don't worry if you can't hear the game audio, by the way. We do have a little bit of a technical issue that we're working through at the minute. Should be fixed in due course, but we can't hear the game either, so it is a little bit disorientating sometimes when you can't hear the gunshots, but you can see the guns firing and you can see the bodies falling. But rest assured, it will be fixed pretty soon.
Thanks, I feel assured.
Good, I'm glad.
Well, Team Liquid are going to be starting their first defense all the way downstairs. We're seeing these drones come out just to check what's going on. They've Rooney gated everything down there. Sexy Cake actually the one to be playing on that. Harlu as well, bringing out the mirror window. I'm definitely a fan of mirror windows being used on this site particularly. This is one of those sites that make you want to ban mirror windows as well. So I want to see how difficult this is for MIBR to deal with, especially when you have a look at the hard breach that they're bringing, right? I mean, of course, you can destroy mirror windows using soft breach too. I mean, an Ash charge can absolutely do it if you can hit the gas canister in the right place. But also, if you're looking to destroy with hard breach, it's oftentimes a Hibana who you look to do that. And I don't think a Thermite is necessarily going to have the opportunity to push up as aggressively as he might have to. It looks like at least one's been knocked out, as is PSK, because Falz gets that first kill.
I mean, you say a Thermite pushing aggressively, and it was almost like Falz heard you because he was straight on through. First frag there, acting as entry here for MIBR. Felipox doubling down with a kill over onto Palu as well. Sexy Cake, he's playing on the Aruni. Of course, has that fast fire rate weapon to try and take these engagements, but can't pre-fire for too long. Now, relinquishing his control, or what little control he had of the site, and being left to challenge onto these narrow angles. He will grab a kill over onto Lukid and looks to make a full rotation. He could actually get himself up meeting nice. Hatch. A close C4 there from one of the players on the side of Liquid will be enough for a time, but Sexy Cake, what a rotation, man. He started making that a good 10 seconds ago, and already it is paying huge dividends. That right there is the reason that Team Liquid won that round.
Great rotations being made by Team Liquid, and on top of the fact that they actually failed to deny the plant when they wanted to. It was actually really good from Falz the way he moved out of the way of the C4 at the exact right moment to continue on with the plant. Now, even though it didn't deny the plant, it still shifted him out of his position that he'd chosen. Team Liquid then make that rotation, and they're fairly unimpeded in that decision because MIBR are also lacking in people to help out with that. And it was a really nice coordination of kills from Sexy Cake and Nesk at the end there. Team Liquid add another round onto the board and will be moving upstairs for their next defense. I want to see who Sexy Cake decides he's going to 6-pick onto. That's going to be a Valkyrie. So they're actually going to be running with a lot of information on the defense because, of course, they brought a Maestro as well. That means Evil Eyes. It means Black Eyes. It means that they can deny information from MIBR because of the mute that they've brought as well. So this could put Team Liquid in quite a heightened position over MIBR, whereas MIBR at certain points, and particularly in late rounds when they were on the defense, it certainly seemed like they were waning in intel.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? Because MIBR lead, but you feel like the momentum's with Liquid. And I don't know why that is. That last round felt massive for them there, to stop MIBR from getting any further ahead, lock a round in. It allows them now to come upstairs to dorms. They're only one round behind leveling things up. And you kind of get the impression that, I don't know if it's because we've just seen Liquid play, and of course we watched MIBR much earlier on today, so it kind of feels like a long time ago. But you do feel like the momentum swing is at least with Liquid for the time being. MIBR have got a lot of work to do here. That's a camera that we see every single time, honestly. And we only ever get a glimpse of players that are flicking on through it. But we regularly see that camera, regardless of the team that it is that's going to be playing. Maybe that's the camera that gave Sexy Cake an opportunity at 2 quick kills there. Who knows? But a careless hop in there through the big window is going to be a big oopsie on the side of MIBR.
Yeah, and now Felipox and Reduct are on basically the opposite sides of the map to each other. Felipox is miles away. Reduct was actually hovering over the kid's window, but that's where all of Team Liquid were, and I suspect he decided that that wasn't all too safe for him anymore. Not entirely sure what their game plan is going to be from here, but they do have plenty of time to make it. Just under 2 minutes left, which, on the one hand, yes, that means they lost a lot of players very early, probably too early. but also means they actually have some time. But look, ooh, the kill onto Nesk. I actually thought Nesk was probably going to get that kill for himself, and that gives Reduct access to Attic.
For how long, though? And that is the question that's answered.
We don't discuss it.
Almost a second later. As Palu just decides to swing on in. The information exchange there on the side of Liquid as hot as ever. Why, oh why, did we see anybody on the side of MIBR hopping in through that big window? Like, questions to be answered.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know.
I don't expect you to know, because I can't make logic of why you would try and hop in through that double window. It seemed very akin to the rush round that Liquid tried to pull in their last game on Chalet. It's given Liquid an opportunity to level things up at 4 rounds apiece now. And again, I speak about the momentum. It's with Liquid at the moment. They're now going to arguably the site that they are most known for here on Oregon. And that is going to be Meeting and Kitchen.
Attackers need to locate and defuse as many bombs as they can.
This is very similar to what happened on Chalet against Team 1, which is the last map we saw in the semifinals. And that is, you know, Team Liquid being behind for a while and then steaming ahead. They're not quite ahead yet, but they're certainly on their way to getting there. And yeah, you know, MIBR will know that this is where Team Liquid is going, not just because it's the third site, but also because of the dock pick basically gives away where they are headed. It's very characteristic of Team Liquid to play a dock on this site, have that heavy pushing up. Now, when Team Liquid were playing against Team 1 on this map in the semifinals, one of the things that Team 1 did to overcome the setup from Team Liquid was go in from the kitchen side. They applied a lot more pressure above the kitchen, through small tower, and in through security, and they kind of caught Team Liquid out from an angle that they simply didn't anticipate being approached from. Now, I'm wondering if A, MIBR would consider doing that themselves. I mean, look, they are opening up Split first and foremost, but B, how much Team Liquid will now be expecting that. Team Liquid have Nesk positioned upstairs in the kids' dorms. He has control over the hatch that goes down into kitchen. This is kind of similar to what you would see on a dining defense, but it means that if MIBR do want to take control over kitchen itself and do something very similar to what Team 1 did, they're going to have to go through those players of Team Liquid upstairs first.
We kind of spoke about it in the last game that if there's one defensive hold that you need to learn how to crack for Team Liquid on Oregon, it is this hold of Meeting, because it is just so good, right? Now, MIBR are going for that alternate approach where you really don't play into the Meeting side of things at all. Instead, you lay your focus on taking that control of upstairs and taking that control of kitchen, because trying to deal with the player, whoever it is that's playing the dock inside of Meeting, can often be quite a big ask. Liquid have recognized that and they've changed tack appropriately. That's going to be advancing his way through dorms here. No one really directly challenging at the moment on the side of MIBR. It was kind of a little bit of a dip in and then a dip out of taking control of this top floor. They've opened up the game's wall. They're kind of just leaving Raps to keep an eye on things.
I mean, there's 3 players up here. Okay, Falls gets a nice kill. That's onto Moringa, so that key dock gone. And usually it's Moringa who holds onto kitchen as well. Palu, the next one to go down, he's actually on the site. This could give MIBR room to plant.
Seriously could. I think they've certainly got space in which to do so, but something that Liquid have got is information. However, it seems as though MIBR may have that intel as well. PSK, he's drops himself down into Freezer, going to make a full rotation up these rear stage stairs, but it is all going to be a little bit too little too late. The plant has already gone down. He manages to take down Reduct. There could be some air jabs for him to wade through. You can see one there on the doorway into kitchen. And I can at least hear one maybe on the other side of this doorway as well. We've certainly got a bit of a task on his hand. Going to be able to dodge one of the Toxic Babe canisters there. Or sorry, the flashbangs there. Before Raps is able to take him on down. Pretty rinse and repeat stuff there from MIBR. And finally Liquid's almighty defense of Meeting has been cracked.
So maybe it was a bit premature for me to say that Liquid were pulling away, because they haven't at all, actually, so far led in this game. The thing that I have a lot of questions about with Liquid's, defense on meeting is we've seen it so many times now. Teams are starting to figure it out. They're starting to, be able to overcome it. Liquid moving into SI in the coming weeks, they must have something else planned to have changed that defensive style, right? Because there's no way that they can continue going forward with that same approach, given that it's being figured out. And if it's being figured out within their own region and before the biggest global tournament of this scene even begins, then they don't really stand much of a chance of it holding up when they do go into SI. Now, this is the sort of thing that coaches think of in advance, and I highly doubt that the coaches for Team Liquid are going to be looking at this and they're like, damn it, we need to come up with a new strategy now for SI. This is going to cost us the World Championship. But it's more just that I don't expect to see it come out and be the same thing much more going forward in the future, I don't think.
5 seconds to go.
I guess the great leveler within all that is that in every region we've seen a bit of a super week this week, haven't we? So every team has played a lot of Siege this week in obviously anticipation for what's coming up and the sort of looming SI event. It's going to be a case that there's going to be good VOD footage out there on the majority of the teams that are going in there, and I don't think that any one team will have played, or any one region, should I say, will have played more Siege than the others. So maybe for Liquid it is a case of they were just planning on hammering Oregon throughout the course of Stage 1 and the Copa Elite 6, and then choosing to, dip off back Oregon and not really try and play it as much. How's Redux got himself essentially one shot inside of the first 40 seconds?
Hey, he's still alive. That's all that matters. We had this conversation yesterday. It is one shot headshot in this game, so it doesn't really matter how many HP you have because you could die immediately anyway. It's the best way to play it. It's the best way to approach it. Lukid really just blowing through these walls. He heads on through the kitchen. The site is downstairs, and Sexy Cake has lent into that clash strategy that we did see be brought out against Team 1 just earlier. It only worked a couple of times, and he did really lean into this elbow hold. And a lot of that is because of the lack of the extra shield that you can have from the smoke, which was also banned out when they played against Team 1. So having the clash hit there can really hold that. However, it didn't actually work against Team 1, and when they made the adaptation, they had to move Sexy Cake over towards Freezer first to waste time there before then situating him in blue, and that did successfully work against Team 1. However, right now, MIBR haven't even cleaned out Pillar. There's still the rotate being held here in elbow. The ADSs behind Sexy Cake. In fact, all three have been invested into that area. And he's pushed up very, very closely, meaning Hatch is being prepped, though.
Moringa going to fall first as Fowls is once again early on that entry. He will be taken down there by Nesk. Nesk inside of this freezer can just choose to dip in and out of challenging onto Pillar. Able to remove a little bit of intel as well. The diffuser's still cold on the ground. No one on the side of MIBR has chosen to try and retake that just yet. Nesk is still in a very dangerous position. He's conscious of his flank, but he really needn't Autumn to worry because there's no one that's going to be pushing him from that direction. He's got ping information out for him as well. Sexy Cake has dipped back into that elbow area and has actually got himself back on in toward the site. Philippox trying to get the plant down. He has some cover. The fire arrows have gone out there, but it has not been enough. The diffuser has been abandoned for the time being. More Capital utility coming on in, but with Sexy Cake able to now aggress on up. He's actually able to down Redux there, of course, because he was so low health from earlier. Despite the fact that he could have taken a gunfight engagement, he couldn't have dealt with Clash or her shield. The plant was stopped, and Liquid there have enough pieces of utility to just burn out that round on time.
I like the idea of bringing the Capital, but for me personally, I think that the pressure needed to be applied onto Nesk before their push was going to be successful. Now, maybe that would have meant having someone come down Freezer to flank behind him at the time, or even just a more aggressive push onto Pillar. You know, especially after Moringa was taken out, because earlier on, and for a lot of the competition, Moringa's usually present a bit further back in the site behind Nesk to add the support. So once the support's been taken out, killing Nesk, you're not at so much of a risk for a trade. But because Team Liquid never once late reinforced over the rotate into elbow, if you'd have gotten rid of Nesk, what you could have then done is actually pushed in through the hallway and had someone push in through blue as well. Then combining that with the Capital Fire, you would have actually had way more influence on the positioning of those players of Team Liquid and maybe be able to bring down the clash because you would have had directly opposing angles onto her. It's all about that, even just that one player to give you the space that you need to do something like that. I think the fact that Nesk was still alive made it very hard for MIBR to apply the dimensionality that would have been so much more useful to them in order to achieve what they were trying to.
Attackers must locate and defuse a bomb.
5-5. Nothing standing in between these two teams at the moment. Oregon has been quite a drawn-out affair so far, and it is only map 1 inside of this best of 3. Raps with a bit of a hot breach here. Could be looking to try and inject some pace. He's going to further breach his way on into master bedroom. Have an angle there through trophy. Already he's going to be slowed down. He is greeted with the good old Surrogate. Rooney's utility there, which is going to slow him for a time. You kind of want to try and peek through that for as long as possible before choosing to throw a utility through it to destroy it or disable it temporarily. Because it can often give the game away that you are looking through it if you just immediately start to toss a drone or a flashbang on through.
Well, they still used the game's window, which was available to them without an Aruni gate, so that's where a nade was thrown in from there, but I don't think there was anyone from Team Liquid who was playing close enough to it in games for that to be much of a problem. MIBR haven't really focused on Attic at all here, and that means that Team Liquid have a lot of safety. Nest can just throw out the C4 from the affirmation safety all the way into Games Room. There's no one pressuring Liquid from behind to stop them from doing that.
You look at Sexy Cake as well. His silhouette is making its way ever so slowly up those armory stairs. And that is a dangerous prospect indeed. It's going to be a big vulnerability here for Raps and the rest of his team as they've established themselves well inside a trophy. But I just don't think they've got any control of their flank. Felipox has the breach fully open and can look to try and work with that. Raps is now going to turn his attention along with Lukid to try and deal with Sexy Cake downstairs. That engagement is going to come through, but Sexy Cake is inside of Classroom. He will find the important frag over onto Raps before being traded out there by Lukid. With the MIBR, we're able to deal with that, but they're left with no choice but to aggress on through. Felipox! He goes massive. He finds himself one onto PSK and one onto Palu. Teammate, however, in fouls is going to be downed. With only 30 seconds left, the diffuser does need to be recovered. Felipox has done just that. Moringa finishes off the downed fouls with that Alder. He's still got plenty of bullets to send on down range. Desk now has an inkling as to where the plant is going down. It's all down to Lukid, but the plant has been confirmed. Felipox takes down Nesk. Moringa is all that stands in the way. Lukid comes in with the trade. MIBR the first team here to get themselves onto a match point.
Well, I guess you don't always need a Maverick to be applying pressure onto Attic to win a round. Who knew? I actually really liked the way that MIBR had set themselves up at the end there, especially because Felipox putting the plant down where he did in Games Room, that drew Nesk out of that safety position that I spoke about in Attic, in the Kid Storm's rotate. Until then, he'd had no reason to relinquish that position. Now, it was Lukid, I believe, who was watching and supporting Felipox on the plant. He was down in White Stairs, and how most teams set up this site is that they'll leave the wall at the top of White Stairs soft and open so that you have that direct line of sight onto any player who may be aggressing up on it. But actually, Lukid used that in return. So as Nesk had no choice but to round the corner into Games Room, because that's where the plant was, there was that direct line of sight being held from White Stairs. Moringa was over by Big Window and actually by the bunk, and he didn't have a line of sight onto either of those players. Only if Luke had pushed up the stairs would Moringa actually be able to help. Now, it wasn't even Luke that got the kill onto Nesk, but the point is had Nesk got that kill onto Felipox in the first place, Luke was in the perfect position to trade that back. And then he could have swung on Moringa, or at the very least, Moringa probably would have pushed forward. You don't know if it's guaranteed that Moringa or Luke would have won that 1 versus 1, but everything up until that possibility was stacked in MIBR's favor.
MIBR, the first team here to get themselves onto a match point. Have that going in their favor now as well. But they do have to win this attacking round to avoid an overtime. Now, an overtime in map 1 of the best of 3. It seems a little bit excessive, that, Gio, doesn't it? It seems like, is that just a foreshadowing of what we're going to see for the rest of the 2 maps that are available? Obviously, Liquid have to get themselves to that point first, but they've proved they can do it once already this evening. They fought back of a much greater deficit than just 1 round. Pressure certainly on here.
I was going to say, you're not allowed to have the first map as the beefiest, but then I remembered the SI 2019 finals.
Yeah, it's true.
So it happens, I guess.
It does happen every now and then. I believe regardless of result here, there's a chance that we see all 3 between these two, just with the way that they've been slugging it back and forward so far this evening. MIBR focused entirely now on this round and gaining that advantage. Felipox has made his way in through Attic. Stan Gio, they've gone for the Attic pressure that you were asking for.
Yeah, I'm glad to see it as well. And Team Liquid last time set up one of their evil eyes on the trophy wall facing into Attic. I'm assuming that they did the same this time. So that nade going in from Felipox was likely to remove that. It is something that Team Liquid also did earlier on as well. That's a really nice angle from PSK, though, that MIBR were completely ignorant to. Evidently hadn't droned out down below them and didn't even think to consider the open hatch.
A bomb has been located.
Bit of a blow, because Felipox has been a standout member for MIBR, not only in the last round, but in the game as a whole. It takes another kill to go in Liquid's favor before MIBR find a response. And they are 3 versus 4 here now. And with that control of Attic being surrendered for the time being, they've now got to get back into that position. I think it's going to be Luca to rotate himself on around, as he is going to be inside of Attic now. Raps looking to try and push on through. Lands a ton of shots, but doesn't manage to land the finishing blow onto Moringa. Instead, left pre-firing his way through. How he never killed Fowls then, we will never know. But Fowls is going to try and secure that plant. Paolo and Moringa come up trumps, though. And yep, we are going to see it. Liquid have done it once again. They have taken us to an overtime.
It's a shame, because I wonder if PSK had been droned out earlier, maybe that would have gone a different way for MIBR. But by the time they went in for the plant, you know, Raps knew that they were in a really difficult position, because he knew that you had the Maestro in Kidstorms, who was going to potentially swing out on them, but either way had dealt a ton of damage. Then you had the player all the way over by the bunk, by big windows. So he knew that he was being watched tentatively, or rather keenly, by those players from Team Liquid. He did check to see if there was anyone at the top of White Stairs, guaranteed that there wasn't. Then we had the run through from not Felipox. We had the run through from the player who was carrying the diffuser to actually try and plant Falls, who was trying to plant. But at that point, you know, we saw from the overhead, there were players from Team Liquid kind of emerging in from all different angles, and it's very difficult to do that. And yeah, Luke was, you know, he was flanking up in the rear in Attic, but by the time the other 2 players of your team have actually gone down, very difficult to take that yourself.
It really is. It is worth mentioning, we have come back to us because we did have a player on the side of MIBR drop. Due to the sort of unstable nature of internet inside of the Latin American regions, the players have got, you know, much more lax rules on small disconnects, because it is something that happens a little bit more regularly over there, just because their net isn't as stable. So it is 100% a technical think. Is that what Simon's just written? Simon is definitely trolling me here. Basically, it's a technical timeout, but obviously it is being used as some sort of time to figure out what is going on here. As obviously it is an important moment inside of this game. 6-all. Liquid have done it once again to level things out. You know, it's something that we saw them do earlier, Gio.
Yeah, we did. I mean, again, it was about that whole, you know, well, actually, I was going to say it was about that whole idea that MIBR were like running away with it. And yes, at the end of the first half, MIBR definitely had the advantage, but it's not even like that there was a really extreme lead that was being held. It was a 4-2 split. It's very normal to see 4-2 splits on the majority of maps that we have in Rainbow Six Siege, and they were on the defensive side as well. So to have the outcome be the way it is, it's actually a bit more standard here in Oregon, but, you know, Team Liquid being supposedly known for being an Oregon team and have struggled on it as much as they have over the last couple of days. You know, it's not that they've had a really, really tough time, but in theory, they should be incredibly dominant on it, and they haven't been. And it's not even just once that they haven't been, it's a couple of times now. Plus, add that onto the Black Dragons game that happened towards the end of the regular season. I don't know how much I would, in future, recommend Team Liquid to pick Oregon as their first map.
Well, I think we've got the benefit of hindsight here, Gio. So I would wager it's probably not the best thing to do. But Team Liquid have played a lot of Oregon up to this point, so it makes sense that MIBR have got a good idea of how to counter it, and it really goes to that point of, yes, we were expecting this one to go all the way 6-6. Like, there was nothing really separating these two teams. They've both played so much Oregon over the course of, you know, not only the stage 1 that we've seen inside of the BR6, but inside of the Copa Elite 6 as well. So both teams very known, and things that we've seen work for them throughout the course of the stage being unpicked here inside of this map 1.
MIBR starting off on the attacking side should, in theory, put them in the disadvantageous situation, with Team Liquid getting 2 defensive rounds, assuming that this goes all the way to max OT. Now, Ollie, it's been a while since I've worked on the APAC North region, but a thinker on Oregon is taking me back to the days, especially thinking of Q Confirm. You always have players like Producer Boom who especially like to play thinker on this map. What do you think of that?
Love a bit of thinker. It can just inject that level of pace. And especially when there's no smoke in play, the risk is very minimal. You, of course, have the ability to just give all of your team a little bit of a boost along the way, or a good old thinker stim, and it gives you all a bit of reduced recoil. It gives you all a little bit more health, and you kind of get that adrenaline pumping through your veins. And for MIBR here, it might just be that difference maker if they are looking to try and get aggressive onto this.
Well, notice, of course, as well, that she's bringing flashes. Does Finger... She has a secondary heart breach, right?
Finger, I believe so, yeah. We don't really get to see the secondary heart breach all that much. I know that Capital has it.
Yeah. Zero does as well.
Zero has it as well,
yeah. Well, Finger obviously had nades. So it was a bit weird to not see them. Either way, I'm assuming this is going to be... ooh, I was going to say an aggressive push, and actually that timed perfectly with when the finger boost came out, but 2 kills for Team Liquid does not look good for MIBR. Nesk is just adding on PSK as well. Who is going to get the last one? It's PSK. A flawless round for Team Liquid sets them up pretty damn well for their overtime.
It does. They've come downstairs into laundry and been able to pick up very convincing round there. An odd take as well from MIBR. We've not seen the Finker before, really, from them at all. I'm struggling to recall a single time that they've played Finker. I would have thought that sticking to the status quo there maybe could have netted them a result, but it is not to be. They tried something new and paid the price. We're going to see the same site chosen by MIBR here, as the sides will switch. Sexy Cake going to 6-pick himself off the Hibana and onto the knock. What's your thought there about not actually bringing a Hibana to this site? It puts a lot of pressure on the Maverick to open that kitchen hatch, but it is possible for Maverick to open kitchen and freezer hatch. But then that's it.
Yeah, well, what I will say... Actually, no. I was going to be like, maybe this is a sign that we're not going to have a meeting hatch drop, but I suppose PSK can still open that up, still get the Maverick doing that. So there's still a chance that that's going to happen, but I would imagine if that you're bringing a Nook, you're probably not looking to be quite so loud about your entrance in. I'm wondering how Team Liquid are going to approach this. I would assume that Sexy Cake his job is going to be entering into the site from a different direction to everybody else, so that there is that attention that's diverted away from him. I'm wondering if maybe he'll be looking to go down laundry stairs, for example, and planting laundry while fights ensue over towards the north side of the site, and something like that. And I don't know how much the Hibana ban is going to affect that, because if all Team Liquid need is, for example, to open the meeting hatch, they can do that with the Maverick.
You're pinning a lot of hopes and dreams on one singular hatch drop that we've kind of rarely seen work here inside of this.
Especially for Team Liquid.
Yeah, you'd think back to Team Liquid, that hatch has not been a mainstay in their finest hour highlight reel. That would maybe be the biggest whoopsie highlight reel.
The blooper reel.
Yeah, it's certainly blooper reel material. Probably a clip of it is floating around somewhere, but it hasn't been a hotspot location for them. Now, I've got something kind of different to deal with in this site setup as an example. Obviously, Fal's bringing the mirror windows there. He's going to be allowed to place those out. There is one going to be inside a freezer, which looks on in. Freezer, a popular point of ingress for Team Liquid. As to be fair to them, they have avoided this meeting hatch drop for the majority of this game. They've been instead favouring pressure in laundry and freezer, and it is something that's worked for them. But scarily, they're all kind of congregating around this hatch.
Where is Sexy Cake? This is what I want to know, because I want to know if he's going down laundry stairs or maybe elsewhere. And if these mirrors are in play, then maybe that will give eyes onto him that Team Liquid didn't necessarily expect.
Sexy Cake really is the unknown factor here. Drone information now being gathered by Neski. He is actually going to be
freezer, okay.
Freezer. So kind of a non-factor really, because there's going to be a mirror window that is looking in that direction. I guess the only thing he's got really now is his timing and how he chooses to push on through. A dump of utility down that electrical hatch is going to be enough, and it's kind of like, who's brave enough to go first? It is not going to be Paolo as he waits for his teammate to go. Moringa takes himself down there and immediately gets traded on out. A huge C4 from Raps flies on in. Sexy Cake coming in from the freezer. It was all a little bit too much, too late. He will find himself a couple of frags for his trouble. But we can see that the diffuser is down cold in elbow. And Sexy Cake has to try and aggress on through. He has gotten himself effectively into a 1v1 here as Redux is already down, but that intel is being fed on through. Sexy Cake with the confidence there, but it won't pay. Fouls and the Vector do the damage, and we go all the way to maximum overtime.
Meeting hatch drops are so messy. Please don't rely on them when you want to close out a map. I don't like it. It really, I don't like it. Oh, man. I could see the thought process behind what Team Liquid were doing. You know, it's what we discussed and speculated at the start. They were going to make a loud entrance in through one part of the map, send Sexy Cake in quietly through another part of the map. The problem is, by the time Sexy Cake got to that point that he was going to move in, a lot of Team Liquid had died, and there was very, very messy gunfights that had been at play, and Sexy Cake's route in wasn't necessarily as safe as they perhaps hoped. So, not the best. It was an attempt. And it means that we're going to be going to max OT here on map number 1. of the grand finals of the Copa Elite Six. And it's going to be upstairs. MIBR, once again, are on the attack. We said how that's probably going to work against them. And actually, for both of these teams, that has indeed been true. In overtime, they have both lost their attacking rounds. Both of them, however, did take slightly unorthodox approaches to those. We had the Finker for MIBR back on round number 13, and then we had the Nook from Liquid on round 14. When I look at these operator lineups right now, it looks more standard, more what you would expect on just your average run-of-the-mill map.
Attacker's objective is to locate a bomb and defuse it.
It's taken us all the way to max OT to get there. Obviously, jokes aside, a big round here for both of these teams. It's crazy to think that this is only map 1 inside of this best of 3, Joe. They've taken us all the way here. There's been a lot of rounds that have come down to the wire. We've seen very few rounds end before the halfway mark, as both these two teams have used every available second to bring us to what essentially is all coming down to one round. One round for Team Liquid to defend top floor, one round for MIBR to attack it. There is nothing else after this. We will decide a winner inside of map 1 and then be able to start thinking about and moving on to map number 2.
Into the second minute of the round. Everybody's still standing. MIBR, when they first attacked onto this site, basically completely ignored Attic. The second time, they didn't completely ignore Attic, but they still didn't win the round out just because of the sort of panic that ensued at the end of that round itself. Now, you can tell the Team Liquid are waiting for players to maybe approach onto Attic, but right now it doesn't look or sound like that is the case. PSK was also positioned downstairs before, whereas this time he's right by the bunk. His position downstairs allowed him to catch out the players that did walk in through Attic. But this is probably going to make it harder for Falls, as he's the one playing on big window, trying to open up or maybe get an angle in from there. You don't usually see a Hibana doing that. Now a lot of this vertical play coming out from beneath by MIBR.
There's so much intel here for MIBR to work from as well. Rap still has one shot left in Ash's launcher. Luca has a couple of lifelines available, but nothing that he's going to really be able to do all too much with. Sexy Cake has rotated all the way over to Attic, but he's found, well, that hasn't been opened really by the attackers, and he's actually going to get caught out on a rotation back into sight by Reduct. Time continuing to tick. Moringa takes some chip damage. PSK is sitting at just about half health as well. We're expecting a big flood here from these attackers, and well, the location of that flood is going to be in through that big window kind of area. As Nesk takes a bit of a swing and a load of damage as well as he's trying to fight his way in and around the Attic area. 4 seconds do remain. Fowls has the diffuser and has found time and space to get the plant off. Palu in the corner of Dorms is going to find one, but it isn't going to be enough for Leapox with the trade. MIBR, after a long old Oregon, they take it. They take map number 1 inside of this best of 3.
And for the second time today, Team Liquid have lost their map pick to their opponent. Now, we knew that this was overall going to be a pretty close grand finals, but for the first map of the best of 3 to go all the way to max OT is not something that I had in mind. There you go. Nice look at the scoreboard. I mean, Luke looked pretty good there. He's got a 2.0